listening to the Retail Razor Show, where your expert hosts and their guests cut through the clutter in retail and retail tech to shape the future of retail.
Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 2 of the Retail Razor Show. I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm your co-host, Casey Golden. Welcome to Retail's favorite podcast, where we cut through the clutter to give you sharp insights on the retail industry and commerce technology. It's the show for product junkies, supply chain technologists, and everyone else in retail and retail tech alike.
So Casey, we are off to a fantastic start to Season 4, coming off of our 2024 predictions episode last time with special guest Ben Miller from Shop Talk. I feel I can safely say with confidence that we are totally keeping the momentum going with this episode's topic.
Absolutely. This is yet another episode topic that's near and dear to my heart. And frankly, we haven't truly focused on it since, Season 2, when we had Brian Dove from Commerce Hub with us talking about the future of commerce. And of course, Commerce Hub since merged with Channel Advisor, and they go by Rhythm now.
That's true. And even that episode only touched on today's topic. It wasn't quite the focus of the episode.
Let's not keep the topic a secret any longer.
Yes, and if listeners were about to guess that we're going to talk about omnichannel, they would be wrong.
Very wrong. And honestly, if you guess that, you haven't been listening to us rant about omnichannel with so many guests before.
That's right. And especially considering one of our predictions last episode was that we're finally calling the death of omnichannel and moving on to unified commerce. So guess what? Our topic today is unified commerce. Now, listeners may be wondering how this fits into our Season 4 theme of unlocking retail with the integration of AI, humans, and media.
I'd say that will be crystal clear by the time we get to the end of this episode.
Absolutely. So with that said, let's cut right to it then. Today, we've invited a very special guest, Giri Agarwal, the Chief Strategy Officer at Incisiv, a leading insights firm for consumer industries.
Let's listen now to our conversation with Giri and how unified commerce is the future of commerce.
Retailers are leveraging advanced technologies like real-time inventory visibility and AI-driven personalization to enhance customer experiences and drive revenue growth. But the conversations about omnichannel are finally coming to an end as technology is making unified commerce the real reality of retailing today.
Unified commerce is about 70% of the reason I get out of bed and come to work. And unlike omnichannel, we all know what unified commerce is, not just technology, but also a leadership role, which brings us to why we're all tuning in for this episode.
Today, we have a very special guest joining us to discuss how retail is shifting to a more unified approach to commerce and why the future starts here. So welcome, Giri Agarwal, Chief Strategy Officer at Incisiv. Giri, it's fantastic to have you here with us today.
Hey, Ricardo, thank you. Hi, Casey. Morning. Yeah, my 2024 moments arrived. I don't think it gets better, and it's only February, so it's lovely to be on.
Absolutely. And if there's a line in the sand, I'm on your side, and there are no silos. The path to purchase is not linear. And I also believe it's a series of consumer touch points that trigger an array of user journeys for both internal brand ops and consumer touch points.
No, couldn't agree more. I think the path to purchase is long dead, and we're sort of in an engagement continuum. This is one of those dystopian movies with a circle, but hopefully by the end of this, we'll solve the dystopia and people can look at this more positively.
And jump out of the circle. So, Giri, before we jump in any further, you and I have known each other for many years now, and it's a super thrill to have you on the show finally. But why don't you start by giving our listeners a little bit about your background and tell everyone what Incisiv does?
Yeah, so I think the best intros come from how we've gotten to know each other, which is actually through evenings spent at BXL Zoot, which is my favorite New York City bar, 22nd
Absolutely.
Street between 5th and 6th. For anyone that doesn't take anything else away from today, go.
Make sure you take a note of that.
Go to BXL Zoot. And for others that we haven't had an opportunity to meet before, I'm Giri Agarwal, co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer at Incisiv. Incisiv is an independent industry insights firm. We focus really on consumer industries and focus specifically on commerce, supply chain, and emerging technologies. So yeah, I've been privileged to really be participating in a lot of the strategic programs that we run and unified commerce, just both as an overall area is one that we've focused on quite significantly, and happy to bring some of those insights into our chat today.
Just to kick off, can you explain the concept of unified commerce and why it's become increasingly important in today's retail landscape?
Yeah, I'll just focus on two things just to get us started. I'd say first and foremost, consumers are great at mashing their physical and their digital realities together. But for a second, in fact, let's just not even use the word consumers and really begin to think about how all of us just behave in today's day and age as just human beings, as people living on this earth at this current moment. We are so comfortable mashing our physical and digital realities together, whether that's you're plugging into your Spotify playlist on your Uber ride over, whether you're listening to that podcast on the subway ride in, whether it is just the sort of immersion that has become just second nature to all of us. And a lot of companies get that and are as good at it as we are as human beings, as shoppers. But most of the retail industry wasn't really designed for this level of unification, this mashing together of their physical and digital realities. They're just not good at it. Their organizational culture, their customer experience, their processes, their people incentives, their technology systems aren't built for today's reality. So over the past 20 years, I think we've basically thrown duct tape and glue to patch together systems that weren't designed to do what we're making them do. And that's great. I think kudos to retailers where it's extremely difficult and hard to do that, especially through the past COVID years, where, again, some of this stuff really became essential, existential to us as human beings. And I don't want to just throw bricks at something that's really been a way of survival for many of us. But I think it's time to really fundamentally rethink what the approach needs to be. And that is what, to me, unified commerce represents. It's a fundamental reset of thinking about how we should design and define a single retail experience. So that's the first thing I'd say. And for those that may roll their eyes at it and say that's a little too fruity philosophical for their taste, here's some hard facts. And the hard fact is that retailers have reached the end of the traffic acquisition-based growth runway. If you look at a simplified growth equation, it's really traffic times conversion times average order value times purchase frequency. Those are your four key levers of growth. And traffic today is dead on arrival. So what you've got remaining is the opportunity to impact conversion, impact purchase frequency, and impact average order value. And that is the domain of delivering a great customer experience, a unified customer experience, and really getting more shoppers to say yes more often and build a deeper relationship with you. That's why unified commerce matters. That's what unified commerce to me is all about.
I love that explanation, particularly because it speaks to the fact that I completely agree with you that there's no more runway left on that, because it really isn't about volume of feet coming through your doors anymore, right? Because what matters now is the quality of those visits and what those visits amount to. And then even more so, the fact that that visit isn't the only method you have to convert that customer. And to your first point, that customer doesn't necessarily always want to convert that way either. They want to convert any way they want, wherever they are, no matter what they're doing. And a retailer has to be prepared and enabled for that.
No, 100%. I think the idea of understanding the intent and the engagement with the shopper, that is fundamental again. So forget the big words around unifying or whatever else, but truly it begins with the shopper and begins with understanding what it is that they want, when and where they want to engage with you, and being able to serve that, not in the same way across all channels, which I think was what omnichannel all became about. Let me do everything everywhere. No, just smartly being able to utilize the natural strengths of an engagement mode versus another, and then being able to really thread them together seamlessly for them so that the burden is taken away from the shopper.
You're going to be like my new best friend. I had no idea, Giri.
we just need to now move this to a live session next time, that BXL, and that's it.
BXL, yeah. That'll be the follow-up. Yeah.
Perfect. I'm in. How can businesses effectively transition towards a more mature, unified system? What are some of the key challenges that they're going to encounter on the way? It's not going to be painless.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think the answer is obviously going to be depending on a retailer's current maturity. So I'd say the challenges they face may vary widely, but the most basic one I think most retailers grapple with is just how much of the store experience is driven and dependent on legacy store tech that is hardwired into their operations, right? It's in those point of sale systems, it's in hardware, it's in camera systems, it's embedded into their physical infrastructure. And it's extremely difficult to extract this in-store functionality and digitize it. So you have the same amount of freedom and flexibility and speed in spinning up, say, a new point of sale interface, right? I want to quickly turn my store and pop up a express store interface. It should be as easy for me to do that as it is to pop up a digital storefront. So extracting that sort of hardwired retail gooiness from stores, I think, is a big step. Second, I think we've got a lot of duplicity and redundancy. Duplicity, is that a word? Duplication, duplicity, whatever, pick one. And redundancy in our core systems that make up a retailer's commerce stack today, right? So you've got order management now that has some light point of sale capabilities. You've got point of sale that can do in-store fulfillment. You've got e-commerce platform that could probably serve some of your in-store needs. We know a lot of retailers that are using e-com in their store. So you've got this sort of complex mesh of systems that are talking to each other the best they can, but there's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of duplication, which adds complexity. Complexity begets an opportunity to fail and remove in the opposite of simplicity, which is what we're looking for. And the third thing I'd say is, this is where I think I caution both some of our technology partners as well as retailers, which is I don't think there's any single sort of technology silver spoon, right? It isn't a monolithic bad and microservices good. It's really ultimately the question is, what is the right technology approach for me? The most pertinent thing to determine for a retailer is who they want to be, what sort of approach fits them. Do they want to go quick in many markets and have a stable platform that can allow them to just quickly go ahead and experiment quickly, maybe go with a quarterbacking sort of a technology platform and then build around it? Or do they want to be a technology giant with a team that can battle the likes of Meta and Apple and Google for the talent that they can acquire? Then sure, go ahead with a microservices-based, atomic, composable commerce approach and go nuts. But believing that any one approach is either too good or too bad, I think is just a fool's errand.
Are there, amongst those challenges, is there something that equivalent to a digital reset that some retailers need to think about and how they take this approach and how they're looking at doing this integration to bring those capabilities in store as much as taking those in-store capabilities into other channels?
Yeah, I think we have to almost rethink the overall commerce stack. And one of the challenges would be around really three sources of the atomic level of data that really moves retail, right? Which is really going to be around your customer. We've spent a lot of time, omni-channel, long may the term live. I really don't care as much as recognizing the fact that the last 20 years have not been about the customer. They've been about inventory. They've been about items. That's what omni-channel as in overall philosophy represented to me, which was being able to see where I have inventory available and be able to serve it up to wherever the shopper is, make it easy for them to do that. But you've also got to marry customer data, inventory data, and now with context data, which is the idea that just because I have that sectional couch as Ashley Furniture available on a Friday at 8 p.m. in my New York store doesn't mean that I actually serve that up to an online shopper, because I've got to recognize the labor I have in the store at that time, the fact that I'm going to pay them overtime. I may not even be able to serve that up and bring that out curbside, right? Should I do that? Does it make sense for the shopper? Does it make sense for me? I think the combination of those two things is really the foundational building block of success. And the challenges retailers are going to go through from a digital reset perspective to me are, you've spent a lot of time on the inventory systems, you just haven't on the customer side, and you haven't on the business logic of codifying what a good experience means to your shopper and what is good business for you.
I think that's a great point. One of my biggest proponents of a unified commerce approach is the fact that you have the ability to gain context rather than having 5 silos talking to each other. You can actually just see how the conversation's going. You can see front to back, you can add the context, and it's a lot easier to come to those solutions of the business logic of, well, just because I can, does the customer want it?
Yeah.
Is it extra? Is it good? Or am I just adding a layer of complexity that actually doesn't help the customer experience?
No.
But I think it's hard to do that without having that streaming and streamlined visibility across multiples. That's how we get to seamless. the context has been missing through digital I just feel like it's that we've never had context on the digital side. All the context arrives in stores because there was a conversation and you understood why somebody was here.
Right.
Online, you have no idea why somebody's there. And they might be walking through the park right now, talking to a friend, looking at something that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
The context is different. They didn't necessarily stop what they were doing for you. Whereas traditionally, we knew people stopped what they were doing to come walk into a store and spend time with us. We knew how important we were.
Absolutely. And that's where that sort of multi-dimensional, non-linear, complex engagement, right? People want to start and stop when they want, right?
Yeah.
People want the ability to have discrete engagement, right? I could be engaging with you, but I don't want to be interrupted in another task that I'm performing. I could be as immersed. I could be in your store, right? Plugged in, listening to my podcast, going through that process. And the only time I actually notice you is at that point of friction where you interrupt my seamless movement through life. Right? I think people have to also recognize that I am not going through a shopping journey as a shopper. I'm going through life. I'm going through a wide variety of things in that current moment. I'm texting my family. I'm probably checking in my email or WhatsApp. I'm planning for dinner. And really, thinking about your place in their world and almost getting out of the way so that they can go through with it, I think is a fundamental thing that retailers got to think about.
Yeah, 100%. So here's a question for you, Giri, on that note. How do you see, or maybe I shouldn't, it's not a how question, maybe it's a can question. As retailers are immersed in all things AI this year, how is AI going to help them with that, or is it?
Yeah, I'd be careful about my response to it. I mean, there are so many greater, smarter, bigger, wiser voices around AI. It's a broad question. My head really goes towards, again, the idea of how are you going to get to effectively utilizing artificial intelligence unless two states are progressing, right? Number one is the existence of accurate, unified customer data that you can actually trust, upon which you might be making some AI-based observations, right? So again, that foundational customer data platform to me is key. And the second is going to be that ability to orchestrate action based on AI across the touch points that you control, your store, your mobile app, your web, your call center, and your social media, and those that you don't. Marketplaces, physical devices of your shoppers, third-party systems, et cetera, et cetera. So I think AI has a significant role to play. However, folks that are able to extract greater value from it will probably have those simpler building blocks first in place. So without that, I don't think AI is a solution for anything. Yeah. It's something looking for a problem to solve for. But yeah, as we went through one of the most ambitious sort of research exercises we've undertaken. This is in partnership with three of our friends at Manhattan, Zebra, and Google. And when I say why it's ambitious is because when we looked at and identified that unified commerce is going to be a space that we should focus on because of the importance that we've discussed so far, what we found was a lot of people were looking at unified commerce or looking at a customer experience and saying, okay, if you do these 16 out of 20 things, you're great. Versus, hey, back to our does it matter? What matters in luxury is very different from what matters in home furnishing, is very different from what matters in footwear versus fast fashion. So that nuance of what matters to a particular industry segment, a particular business, and then the actual going through of the experience, not just observing if you offer this, but how do you actually execute it? If I walk into that store and I try a few things in a luxury store and your associate actually helps me, they know me by name, I have a transaction that you have on file, why is it not a standard practice that the next time I log onto your website, that your search filters auto default to my size profile? Are you appending any information from that store visit, right, into my online experience? Right. How is it that I can have 8 items in my wish list or online cart, and 2 weeks later I visit you and you have no freaking clue who I am, right?
That's right.
So those are the sorts of things I think that hopefully AI can help smoothen, but you've got to have the building blocks in place.
Yeah, it's all those kind of, individually, those are all little things, but they all add up to a massive amount of positive customer experience for the shopper. I think that's maybe you're spot on. That's the right way to look at it. So Can you share some examples based on the research you guys have done and the benchmarking? Who are some examples of retailers that are successfully adopting this unified commerce approach? And do you have a sense of how that's impacted their customer experience? And maybe the question there is, how do you actually assess that? What are the metrics you look for? How are you assessing that quality, if you will, of success in implementing unified commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So the methodology we adopted really looked at about 290 customer experience attributes, right? So it looked at not only whether you do something, but how you do it. How, for example, I may look at the fact that an attribute is, hey, you do product recommendations on your product detail page on your e-commerce site. Sure. But are those recommendations relevant? Are they personalized based on my prior history with you? And we went through some examples just recently right now about, let's say, the store example, but even could be browsing history based. So how well do you do them? The other might be, previously we may have looked at an attribute that says, hey, inventory visibility is important. What we're finding, to your other question about what leaders are beginning to do better than others, what's beginning to shape unified commerce leadership, is not a race to the bottom by chasing parity. So it's not that, hey, we're going to go and everybody should do curbside pickup and 2-day delivery and next day delivery and order this way or that. It's really more that focus on identifying in which segment, what matters most, being clear on that, and actually offering a much richer experience around that. For example, back to the inventory visibility issue, it's not that you can see my store inventory. I think everybody can do that now in today's day and age. But it is, what can I do with the inventory intelligence to improve your experience? Can I look at only stores that have that one item that I need by tomorrow? Can you assort your e-commerce search listing based on my intent, either by store, either by fulfillment type, what have you? Can you tell me what metrics are going? X number of people bought this in the last 2 hours, only 6 remaining. When is it going to be back in stock if it's out of stock? Can you give me other options to fulfill? Substitutions. So it's a whole flywheel of richer experiences that companies that are committing to this approach are getting better at. So I think that's what's emerging for us, which is depth of experience is much greater than simple unification. To your other question about what are we seeing or how are we seeing some sort of measurements of success, as I had said, obviously there is a direct correlation between the 3 metrics I had talked about previously. So there is a direct correlation between greater unified commerce maturity with average order value and with conversion specifically. There is a slightly looser correlation with customer satisfaction, which can be a proxy for purchase frequency or loyalty. But the biggest thing we found was, in our study, we found 15 unified commerce leaders out of 124 assessed in the US. And their average 3-year growth rate, revenue growth rate, was 3 to 6 times their peers. So let that sink in. Unified commerce is highly, highly correlated with driving revenue growth.
How do you see the industry as a whole kind of coming into 2024 with this approach?
In terms of where it is on a maturity or where the investment?
Yeah. If we think of it in terms of a maturity, because you mentioned you identify and there are 15 strong leaders in those metrics that you outline out of all the ones that you looked at. If you were to say as a whole, is that maturity level for the industry, if you were going to say it's on a scale of 1 to 10, are we still in the early stages? Is it as a 4 or a 5? Or are these leaders advanced enough that they're kind of pulling the industry along? And if I'm a shopper, it feels like it's a 7 or an 8.
Great question. I'd say we're still at a 5 on an overall scale. And the basic thing that's holding us back is ultimately there is no unified commerce without a unified cart. And we're nowhere close to the idea of a unified cart.
Yeah.
Out of the 124 assessed, a grand total of 0 have achieved a unified cart. I actually don't even think the industry is thinking or is ready to go down that route, because it is a total fundamental reset of reimagining your commerce stack and maybe having one quarterbacking system, right? Choose one that you major on, and then you build a best of breed potentially around it or whatever you want to do. But a single cart, it's difficult, right? So I think unified commerce in that sense, if we look at it theoretically, gladly will forever remain further away. And that is the point. I think the point should be that we on an ongoing basis constantly reset what a 10 is and hopefully find all of ourselves at a 5 or a 6. so that there is enough upside for people to continue to chase. Now, there are things in places that people are doing better than in other areas. So we decompose the journey or this assessment into 4 journey hops, all interconnected and all non-linear, but we needed to give this some amount of shape. So we've looked at maturity in what we call search and discovery, cart and checkout, promising and fulfillment, and customer service. So out of these 4 areas, the one that we think the battleground's shifting to and which is the least mature of the 4 is promising and fulfillment. Because in a certain way, what's occurred now because of post-COVID is unless you can actually very quickly create confidence in me that you have it, you can get it to me, and by when can you get it to me, right? That sort of accurate delivery date promising piece of it. I am not even interested in anything else. So it's becoming the new entry point for a lot of shopping journeys because they're more intention. So that's the least mature out of all 4. But I'd say the unified cart, which belongs in the cart and checkout piece, is a fundamental piece that everybody's just missing.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guess a lot of that, to your point, from a consumer perspective, it's become all about instant gratification and convenience. And as you said, well, if you can't deliver that, then as a consumer, you immediately lose interest and you want to move on to the next retailer that can deliver on that. I'm curious, as you've been looking at this, do you see generational differences on the consumer side of this? Or is one demographic group deeper into this sense of the instant gratification convenience than others from what you're seeing?
I think it's more to do with a technological adoption. Folks that are more digitally savvy tend to gravitate towards and know how to navigate and very quickly get to the answer that they want to get to. So especially in a need state where I know what I want, of course, it will skew in the younger generation. So your Gen Z, millennial, Zennials, probably a little more. That's now becoming just basic habit of going and looking for, hey, this is how you shop. You look to see if they've got it in the store that's closest to you, or the fact that it might actually be quicker for you to go pick it up versus have it delivered. You may have greater options to return it if you bought it in store, etc. So I think it's compressing. But what's more important right now, what's occurring is I think the relationship retailers need to have to your earlier part of the question on in the age of convenience, which is competing on convenience alone is a slippery slope to the bottom. So you've got to figure out what are the table stakes for your business and then use a unified commerce strategy to execute them better than anybody else or as well as you can. Unified commerce isn't about offering those table stakes. It is about orchestrating those table stake convenient experiences in a operationally profitable, meaningful manner, both for the shopper and for yourself. Second, I think you've got to use unified commerce to redefine convenience. I think there's this trap that we all fall into and think of convenience really only as easy and free returns, free shipping on all orders, next day delivery, blah, blah, blah. But if you really think about maybe somebody like an Apple, the fact that I know I could lose a single airport and there's a way I can solve that problem today, just like I can buy a single airport. That to me is convenience, right, within the construct of what they offer. So retailers, I think, got to really think about what does convenience mean for their shopper and go beyond, don't just compete with the Joneses. So the third piece of it really is going to be around, you've got to give the shopper reasons to want to shop with you despite your not doing certain things that your peers do. That is the definition of loyalty. That is the definition of a strong brand, which is an irrational love. I will go with you despite, not because of. Uniqlo, as an example, has one of the most stringent return policies. You buy something from a store on 34th Street, you can only return it in the store on 34th Street. You can't take online returns or online purchases back to the store.
Yeah.
They've made that conscious choice, but they deliver an amazing experience elsewhere. So those are just, I just go back and say, you got to really fight the convenience piece of it, because if that's what your strategy is, I don't think you're long for this world.
No, I mean, I always say that Amazon scaled the act of trade and like bartering price to price, right? I'll give you this for that. And I believe Selfridges created shopping where I'm going to go for no reason. I'm going to spend half a day there. I'm going to look at things. I'm going to leave. And I'm going to tell everybody I had a great time. I had so much fun, right? No transaction happened. But if those experiences are wonderful, transactions are inevitable. And I keep seeing everyone chasing that convenience. And I'm like, you guys are deleting shopping. We like shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Shopping's fun. Shopping's supposed to be an enjoyable moment. And it keeps getting deleted in these digital journeys. And everybody's trying to get you to the cart really quick. And I'm like, it's not always the point.
Right.
If I'm buying a charger for my phone out of state or out of country, yeah, that's the point. But for most other things that I engage with, you could deliver it to me in 6 months. I really don't care. It's just the fact that I wanted this thing. I got this thing. I had a great experience getting this thing. And I love this brand despite everything. And I'll be with you for another 30 years. And I think that that's not necessarily a lot of retailers' DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from luxury, that is the DNA, is just like, I'll wait 2 years for this. Love you.
Building that lifetime value, building that long lifetime emotional connection with your shopper and with your consumer.
Yeah. And so I think that there is this distinction of seamless to deletion. And deleting that shopping experience isn't always the best thing. What would you say are key points of differentiation for a great unified commerce experience in general? When a brand's thinking right now, like one of our listeners is saying, we have a great unified or seamless shopping experience, what would be some areas that you can call out that make you think, you know what, maybe I don't?
Great question. So again, to your question about making it slightly general, I maybe focused on a few things. Number one is just customer identification. How are you orchestrating a way in which your variety of customer touchpoints, you can very quickly get to a opted-in, non-creepy customer identification so that you can then have a conversation with that shopper. I'll give you a great example. We had visited the Birchbox store when it first launched in New York, when Birchbox was still a thing. And everybody's walking into the store, and this is a subscription-based service. We've got a bunch of retailers. We had 20 people in there, and we were so excited. And the only question everybody was asking Birchbox was, hey, where's the camera? Like, how do you guys know? Like, is it app-based? You know, when I walk in the store, do you know our subscribers in the store because your store associate app has a notification that they've just walked in, or they got to come in, where is there beacons or their cameras? How do you know? And the store manager said, you know what? You walk into the store, based on where you head to, what you pick up, how you're interfacing and interacting with me, I know my subscribers. That's what we're trained on. When you walk in here and you go to the special edit of the thing that only launched for our subscribers, I know you're a subscriber. I don't need this is the dystopian conversation we were having early, that sometimes the solutions are simpler in your face. So that's big one for me, is quick identification of a customer across channels. And the second is, again, related, is arming and empowering your people. Great experiences are delivered by great people. If it were delivered by great tech alone, I think Sears would be the greatest retailer in the world. So, and if you look at Costco, you look at Apple, you look at a wide variety of retailers that, again, I'm going beyond the remit of who and what we benchmark. But again, we have also observed through our benchmark, the leaders have great augmentation of their frontline workforce. This is clienteling, assisted selling, making sure that they can identify, they can help a shopper with exception handling, that they can look into order histories, that they can access their endless aisle and be able to split orders. I want this shipped. I want this gift wrapped. I want all on a single sort of transaction. I want to add something while I'm picking something up. Empower your people to solve problems for you. I think that'll be a huge piece. So those two stand out for me as things that leaders are doing really well, or what defines unified commerce. Leadership that is also tough to do. And the third, I think I'll just throw in there, which is just totally rethinking your store experience. So back to the point you were making around deleting shopping. I think stores are one of, for a omni-channel retailer, which in this case, I'm using the idea that you operate both stores and in e-com. The store, the physical asset, is one of your biggest assets from a media perspective. Imagine the amount of money you have paid to have that customer like Julia Roberts standing in front of a store associate, and I'm just a shopper asking to be romanced. How much money you've paid to acquire that impression when they're maybe coming into the store to return an item, and all you're doing is making it easy for them to just simply return it and making it difficult for them to buy more stuff or engage with you. imagine, I don't know, maybe Kanye can get away with paying $36 million or whatever and putting up a self-shot video. But most retailers, if they paid top dollar for that top ranking search keyword and pointed that to a 404 page not found, I think that person's getting fired. But across the board in retail, we don't think of our stores as media, as customer engagement. We have paid for it. Now they're here. What do we do with it? So those are three things that I'd say leaders do well.
I think that's a great takeaway. So how much is all of this going to cost them, right? We kind of go into the financials of what are some of the financial implications of making the shift to taking a unified approach to commerce. How do businesses measure that return on investment? Is it a direct ROI for like revenue? And do you see it taking, it's not just a project that's going to cost X dollars. It's you're going to shift your budgets this direction for the life of your company now.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And maybe we can think about it in a few different ways. Number one is you're already spending money on trying to achieve unification. I think unified commerce, again, must represent more than just a technology approach. It must represent a cultural change, which actually costs way lesser, but is much harder than throwing dollars at a piece of software or enterprise app or hardware, whatever. I think it's going to cost them their leadership attention. It's going to cost them a few bumps on the road in terms of the way in which people and teams are organized. So that's first and foremost that. Now, depending on the technology approach they take, the initial financial implications can range from actually being a net positive, right? Because you're going to rationalize some tech. Or it could be, hey, you're going to require some capital outlays because you're going to get a new platform and you're going to make it the quarterback and build around it. Either way, I think you are spending already. Now you've got to make a roadmap of over the next 5 years. Which direction do I want to choose? Again, it's more a approach conversation than a investment conversation as such. You are going to continue to invest. Maybe you're going to invest more in integrating systems than you are in going to fundamentally rip and replace them or build new systems. The big investments, I'd say, if they haven't already made, are going to be the platform modernization across your key stacks of e-com, store, order management. Those are three key big ones. And then underlying that is going to be that something that threads that customer data together, right? So that customer data platform. If you haven't done these, I think these are going to be fundamentals. They're going to cost some money. And you can look at in terms of what it means. I'd say look at someone like a Tapestry, quite complex in terms of the fact that it's multi-brand, luxury retail, multi-region, international. But they started many moons ago with a overall sort of ERP type transformation. Then they've gone on to having their unified customer engagement platform. They're building on that, right? So now they're finding that you can actually sweat that asset. So what it does to me is not necessarily put you behind. It actually gives you the ability to green light that next thing quicker and quicker and quicker, and gives you the ability to go at the speed of your consumer, go at the speed that your business needs and deserves now. And that's what it's about, which is the ability to pivot quickly, the ability to experiment rapidly, iterate at a moment's notice, and get you in a position to do that. If you're not on this path, I think you will still do it. You will just do it slower. You will fail slower. And that's it. That's what people need to watch out for. That you're going to go through a 6-9 month program and fail rather than a 1, 2, 3 week experiment and fail and learn and then go again and fail and learn and then go again and get it right and move on.
So looking at it that way, we've touched on the what, the how, and the ROI on unified. Maybe let's look at it another way. It's 2024, right? So why now? Why is this the moment that we're saying retailers really, if they're not already doing this, to your point, if they're doing it too slowly, what's the consequence? Why now? What are the risks of not doing it?
So let's start with maybe the idea, like three fundamental things that are happening in our world right now. Right? So it's an emergence moment has arrived. So if we think unified commerce and people want to roll their eyes, Mark Zuckerberg just did a very authentic review of the Apple Vision Pro that was shot on a Quest device. And he's one of the biggest tech entrepreneurs of our generation. Right? Is fully all in on even virtual commerce. So that ship is sailing that way with Meta and Apple and the big tech giants behind it. So immersion and the collision of our physical and digital worlds is a reality, and it is only going to get more and more crazier. So embracing the fact that the physical and digital need to unify, I think we should just agree that ship is sailing. You should get there. We're in a slightly wonky economic reality. What tends to occur is that you don't shape engagement strategies because of a certain economic reality. You act from a position of strength. So you need to be ahead of when the next wave of either spending uptrend occurs, that you are the brand that people choose because they love you, or when wallets are tight, that they are the ones that they spend their limited dollars with. And that's going to again be incumbent on whether you've got a great brand ethos, but also have you respected the time they have spent with you by making it easy for them to engage with you, making it delightful for them to engage with you. That's a unified commerce strategy, play wheel as well. The third I'd put out there is sustainability is going to be the only viable business model going forward. And therefore, not omni-channel, not let me give you 20 different ways to get the same item in 8 different boxes 7 days a week, versus let me actually combine the context of my shopper, combine the context of my inventory, combine the context of what makes sense for my business, what makes sense for the world, and give you a variety of options that maximize for those outcomes, right? Including, let me tell you sustainable stories. Let me be an Allbirds that can actually design a store that is now about sustainable storytelling. And let me unify all of my experiences so that when you go to my website, when you go to my app, when you look at my product, it has one ethos. That is what unified commerce is about. So I think that's, to me, sort of why. And then what you're going to forego, you're going to forego the opportunity to maximize conversion. You're going to forego the opportunity to have a shot at improving your average order value. Those 3 sort of things that we talked about, and believe that you can drive growth without an active ally, which is an excellent unified customer experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. This has just been a fascinating, deep discussion on just everything unified commerce that is, I know, very near and dear to Casey's heart for sure. But before we wrap up, Giri, any final thoughts or advice for retailers, particularly, for example, the one thing I can think of, we didn't touch on the variations by segment or product category that a retailer's in, right? Any final thoughts there on a unified commerce approach?
And so great observation there, right? Because again, back to do these 20 things, you're great. It's not like that. There are significant nuances by industry segment. Customer reviews, as an example, right, don't matter in luxury. They may matter quite significantly in consumer electronics.
They're not even listed.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
It's not even an option.
Yeah. So, but there are so many studies out there. If you engaged a third party to go and assess your customer experience today, if you're a retailer, there are very few approaches that take that nuance into account. So making sure that when you're going out there and having yourself assessed, do it against, number one, certainly do it in your industry segment. The other thing I'd say is, while that is true, do it against cross-category experience leaders. What I mean by that is, if you're going to benchmark your checkout experience, and if you are Target, let's pick, don't benchmark it against Walmart. Benchmark it against Uber. That is the benchmark of a checkout experience, right? Personalization, benchmark it against Netflix and how they can build revenue streams around it. So I think this sort of idea of just resetting what specific experiences can mean to people, if you get them right, they can spawn multi-billion-dollar businesses by solving for what is in your retail value chain a simple sort of step. So might as well at least elevate the way in which you think about it. So elevate your benchmark, find the nuance of what your shopper needs, and go and commit to a few things that you think are going to move the needle for you, and commit to them and make that experience really best in class amongst your peer.
Wise words.
Never been accused of that, I'll take it.
Giri, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights with all of our listeners. I'm betting on unified commerce this year as one of our top trends and most important aspects. We'll see how I do at the end of the year and see how much momentum we get. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Giri.
No, absolutely phenomenal. Lovely to have been on, and I appreciate you allowing me to go on my soapbox there for what seemed like an eternity for you, I'm sure. It went by pretty quickly.
Oh, no. Absolute pleasure. And say this episode is a wrap, Ricardo. If you enjoyed our show, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods. Remember to smash that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player and tune in on YouTube so you don't miss a minute. A big thank you to our Good Pods listeners for helping us stay in the top 3 spots of the charts. I'm your co-host, Casey Golden.
Please connect with us and share your feedback on Twitter at KCCGolden, Ricardo_Belmar, and at Retail Razor, or find us on LinkedIn, Threads, and Instagram. And if you want all the highlights from each episode shipped straight to your inbox, subscribe to our Substack newsletter for full episode transcripts and bonus content. I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep cutting through the clutter and stay sharp. This is the Retail Razor Show.